It's Monday again, Tuesday in New Zealand. Let's take a look at some setups, some crypto setups. Last week it was about Bitcoin, alt setups, not Bitcoin. This week it's also about alt setups and BTC pairs. Chris Dunn, an early mover into crypto trading. Some of you older OG crypto people will recognize the name, but he put out a very prescient tweet yesterday about altcoin seasons or alt seasons and where he thinks we are. People buy Bitcoin creates a bull run, profit taking on Bitcoin, alts start moving, breakup buyers start buying, which was me on Ripple a few days ago. New people chase, pros take profit, prices crash. This happens over and over again, and it has happened over and over again. What we're seeing mainly on the BTC pairs right now is mean reversion back to some old school targets, 200-day moving averages, volume, profile levels, that sort of thing. If we look at one that hasn't moved yet, so make a list of all the old coins that you like, take a look at all the charts on the BTC pairs, see which ones are in the absolute dumpster. You know, what dumpster fire coins can you pick up here potentially that can move? So Doge is basically at an all-time low. It's at 18 sats. I mean, there's 18 more sats lower before 0 sats. So at this point, risk reward is pretty high for a move to the upside. At the very least, 40 sats. Asking for 100 sats is probably a bit much at this stage in the game. But a 2x from here is completely reasonable. If and when it starts to see activity above 40 sats, then you can get excited about 100 sats. But until then, 40 looks like it's been the floor several times, and now it looks like it could be the ceiling. ETH BTC, I will maintain my stance that it is rather untradeable on any given day. It's just too volatile for me personally. I know people who have success trading it, who love trading it on lower time frames. I think on higher time frames, it's just generally a giant mess. It did put in a nice W double bottom on higher time frames maybe a couple days ago, and that just instantly spiked back up to basically the yearly pivot, back up to this VPVR resistance level. I'll also maintain that ETH BTC will eventually hit 05. I don't know when. I think it's impossible to trade. I'm not going to touch it, but I think that's where it's headed eventually. I mean, it might go to 04, then to 0, then to 05. I don't know. I don't know. I have no feelings on it right now. It's obviously bullish, but definitely not a trade for me. XRP BTC, kind of an about face from historically what's happened. It typically bleeds rather quickly and then explodes over a few days. Through 2019, through 2020, it's basically bled slowly and is now beginning to recoup some of those losses. It's still down 85%, 80%, whatever it is from the highs. It's busted above this VPVR level, sort of the historic resistance based on volume, potentially has a 5,000 sat target based on yearly pivot and resistance. Will that happen before the end of the year? Will that happen before BTC starts to break down, which I think is in the cards? Sooner rather than later, BTC is going to hit a mean reversion to the downside, whereas these alt BTC pairs are trying to mean revert to the upside right now. I think if BTC breaks down in a big way, these alt BTC pairs will also take a hit because the USD alt pairs will take a hit. So right now it's make hay while the sun is shining for alts. BTC is sideways. And that's when alts do best because people are rotating out of BTC and into alts looking for the next trade. Link BTC, a bit of an outlier in that it's moved over the past 2 years, 700%, whatever it is. And right now it looks kind of sad. It's below the 200. Historically hasn't been below the 200-day moving average for a long period of time, but it still is below. Lower time frame Adam and Eve here, VU. It's hard to look at this chart versus this chart and think that this has more upside than XRP. I mean, that's just right now what we're talking about as far as potential. Over the long term, you know, Link might be not worthless and XRP worthless, but right now people are looking at this chart that's down 85% from the highs versus this chart that's down 10% from the highs, and they're thinking, all right, I can make more money here, right? LTC, kind of same story. It is mean reverting. I think last week I was talking about the falling wedge bull divergence. It's starting to mean revert back to the 200. It's done that twice before in the past few months. Upside somewhere around 0.1. That's asking for a lot, I know, but again, historically, it's exploded to the upside if it tries to mean revert upward. So am I bullish on LTC? I don't know, maybe. Looking at Cardano BTC, even more of an explosive move here. On all these, I'm seeing a potential for a inverted head and shoulders, very clearly shoulder, head, and shoulder into January, February, something like that. I don't know. If this stops at these 950 for this chart, 950 sats yearly pivot, I can see this bouncing down at the yearly pivot and then making a run for 11, 12, 13, wherever the measured move is there. Very similar to what happened here. Shoulder, head, shoulder, and then explosion. So I think that's very possible within the next 2 months for Cardano on some of these charts. BNB has not moved relative to some of these other altcoins, so I think people are looking at BNB as well, thinking this is a possible rotation play here. Another factor to consider with these altcoins is, where are they available for trading? Are they available on Robinhood? Are they available on PayPal? Because that's where all the retail volume will come from. Are they available on Coinbase? You can't get Binance Coin on any of those platforms I just mentioned. So that might be a detriment to new money flowing in. We'll certainly see rotation out of BTC into Binance Coin, or coins that are exchange specific, but they may not have as an explosive of move to the upside. EOS, same story. It is at multi-year lows and trying to bounce back to 26k sats, something like that. Something else I should say, none of this should be confused with the bull run for any of these charts on the BTC pairs. Mostly this is just mean reversion. Arguably you could look at XRP and say, all right, it's above the 200-day moving average for the first time since 2019 in a big way. Maybe this is something happening here, right? But I think it's a little overzealous to think all this stuff is just a broad bullish rally. Looking at Stellar, again, down in the dumps, whatever this is, 90-80% from highs, sort of on this cushiony pillow of VPVR support. 8 months of consolidation here recently. Tons of historical price action in 2016, 2017. And maybe it'll finally find the bullish momentum it needs to break above 1k sats again. But right now, again, this just looks like mean reversion. It does not look like bullish rally, bullish continuation. Tron, multi-month, multi-year lows, potentially here below VPVR resistance. This one looks sadder than most of them. You probably want to zoom into 2019, 2020 price action like I did for Cardano, because I think this stuff is not, is comically never going to happen again. So I'd look to the nearer term price action, just because inflation and whatever else is going on with Tron. Tons of upside resistance for VPVR resistance for Tron BTC. So I'm hard pressed to think it's ever going to retest, 1k sats ever again, really. Monero BTC, again, kind of a not listed in very many places problem, because it's a default privacy coin and there's regulatory issues with that. But again, multi-month lows here, sitting at multi-year lows. It looks really good for some sort of mean reversion play back into middle of the previous range. 0.1 has been historically a massive volume level. So a mean reversion to that level wouldn't be too crazy. Based on the past 3 years of charting, that's been the big volume area. Tezos BTC, a bit of a bounce today. I mentioned last week, I think 10k sats looked like a pretty good floor based, again, on historic levels. It's bounced and consolidated here, bounced and consolidated here, trying to bounce here. If it stops here, again, there's a potential for inverted head and shoulders, so the party's not over quite yet, but you can see just how quickly this sold off over the past 2 months, really. I mean, it just kept dying, bear flagging, dying, bear flagging, dying, dying, dying. It finally bull dived here into support. So a mean reversion to 20,000 sats isn't unreasonable. A mean reversion back to the 200-day EMA isn't unreasonable. So that's all in the cards, certainly. If this should stall here, inverted head and shoulders, still 20k sats within the next 2 months, certainly possible. Even just looking at the price action for Tezos over the past couple weeks, Tezos hasn't moved. I mean, it's been at like $2.13 for a long time. So I think people are finally rotating into it. This isn't like a rubber stamp for Tezos is great or amazing. It's just saying it's just rotation. You know, I wouldn't, if you're an altcoin community maximalist, I wouldn't look at this thinking my alt is better than BTC. This is just people literally rotating profits into something else because BTC volatility has slowed. And lastly, looking at Zcash, my favorite dumpster fire coin, all-time lows here at the halving. Nothing more poetic than that. It is currently trying to bounce inside of VPVR resistance, but it is bouncing, you know, so maybe this has a shot at some 200-day moving average touch. I would not misconstrue this for a bullish trend in any way, shape, or form. So overall, alts still look pretty good. They still look like they're mean reverting. Some alts look better than others. Some alts have already had massive runs over the past few years, like Link probably will not have an additional massive run here over the next 2 months, so just keep that in mind. But overall, alts look probably better than they have in a long time, simply because people are rotating profits out of BTC and into anything else with a warm body that hasn't moved yet.